on the World CX Summit Asia, it is time for a tech talk on 3 reasons companies miss the mark on customer centricity and how to fix it. While the businesses are facing major changes with their customer experiences and disruptions to their business models, understanding customer needs, reactions, and behaviors is now more important than ever, and companies are needing to develop a deeper level of customer empathy and intuition. Yet, as we rush to deliver new digital experiences for customers, it means less human to human interaction. Well, after this session, you'll be able to understand the 3 reasons companies continue to miss the mark on customer centricity and how to course correct, gain new ideas for filling the empathy gap, and more effectively bring the voice of your customer into decision making. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for this session, we're joined by Michelle Huff, the Chief Marketing Officer, UserTesting USA. Well, Michelle brings over 20 years of experience leading marketing and go-to-market strategies at high-tech companies such as Acton Software, Salesforce, and Oracle. Thank you so much, Michelle, for giving us your valuable time. Over to you.
Hi, good day, everyone. Welcome to the session. We're going to talk today about 3 reasons companies miss the mark on customer centricity and how to fix it. My name is Michelle Huff, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at UserTesting. And I've spent a lot of my career in technology companies, helping them build applications at places like Oracle, learn more about their customers at places like Salesforce, and then focused on helping other companies better learn their customers here at UserTesting. And speaking about, companies missing the mark on customer centricity, one of the trends that we see quite a bit here in the market is around digital transformation. And many companies are seeing this massive shift in how they're now competing and iterating on all these different experiences. And, some of that, what we're seeing is that with so many new experiences that are being created, that customers now have so much more choice, and they can get access to these services at such a greater speed. Advantages from the business side is that there's so much greater reach and scale as well. So for example, if you're starting up a new service, offering a new product, it's so much easier to find customers now globally in any new market, and also have a lot more access to data about their customers. And we're seeing, Gartner research is showing that so many companies, 80%, expect to actually compete on the basis of the customer experience. Now, with all these different transitions, you can see that experiences, right? We talked about the explosion of digital products and service offerings, but so much of the experience is becoming much more digital and in some ways less human, right? We have so many applications, but there's also this shift towards a lot more communication with our customers through these digital channels. For example, a lot of online chats, there's AI, there's email, there's so many different ways for communicating digitally. And then even experiences that we think of as being much more in person now has digital components, right? There's a lot of businesses, especially right now, offering different curbside pickup. And they have these components where you walk up with your mobile phone, and part of interacting with the business is first online, even in store, letting them know you're there with these digital applications and services. And while we're actually building all of these, in some sense, we're becoming, in many ways, as businesses, much more disconnected, and each interaction is becoming much more transactional. And what we're seeing is that, right, we're having so many more digital experiences, becoming so much more disconnected from the customers, and the pace of building all these experiences, the pace of business is just continuing to accelerate. Right? It's a great quote from Robin Lynn of talking about the market, right, is continually moving fast. And we've seen this acceleration, right? And it's not just the perception of businesses that we're losing that connection. Capgemini ran an interesting survey where they asked all these different companies how many of them are focused on being customer centric, and 75% of them answered yes, they are. They're putting investments towards it. But then when they actually asked their customers, only 30% of them believe that to be true. And you look at these statistics, and it's a little depressing sometimes, right? You look at it and you think, gosh, these companies are putting so much investment into being customer centric and focusing on the customer experience, but then the customers don't actually see it to be true. And we really at UserTesting, we think of this as what we call the empathy gap. Because, right, how can we be customer centric in many ways as businesses if we can't actually empathize with our customers' experiences? And you can think about, right, all these digital experiences. People are interacting, all the people who are coding and developing and building requirements, designing it, writing copy for it, right? All of the people who are really responsible for creating these experiences are now more often behind desks, right, at headquarters, you know, from their homes right now, and not necessarily engaging and actually seeing and talking to their customers. And so, you know, this session today is just talking about, you know, this is why I think oftentimes people are missing the mark on customer centricity. And so, you know, what are 3 ways that we can help actually fix what we call the empathy gap? And, you know, one of my recommendations is kind of rethinking about personas. And personas are oftentimes used in when you create services, whether you're more on the user experience, product design side of the world, as well as if you're more on the marketing side of the world. I love this cartoon from the Marketunist that shows all these different types of marketing personas. But oftentimes when people are creating personas within a company, right, there's a lot of different techniques. And, you know, this one's talking about how sometimes you see all the data and then you create the composite. So our customer must be, you know, having 2.4 children, right? Or there's the stereotype of whoever your customer is, and you kind of pick one person and that becomes that stereotype. Or oftentimes we see at companies is you all get in a room and you reflect and you say, well, if this is actually how I think about the experience, this must be how my customers are seeing it too. So there's lots of different ways. This cartoon's kind of poking fun at all the different ways as businesses that we think about who we're targeting and building for. One thing that I'd recommend if you haven't seen this is a concept around an empathy map. This actually came out of more of the design concepts. And while personas are great, I really recommend layering in a concept of empathy map. And it's a way to take your segments of people, your customers, and starting to think about it through a lens of not just who they are, but what do your customers, what do these people actually say? How do they think? You know, versus what they do versus what they feel. And oftentimes you can do different searches and find different examples of empathy maps. And oftentimes when you read about it, it's not necessarily just having the empathy map created. It's really the journey and getting there. It's the process that you take as a team, as a company, as an individual, when you start talking to customers and thinking about it through this lens. Right, all of this, it really helps you get to know who you're building your experiences for in the first place. So with that, I'd say, you know, if you haven't done it before, the concept of empathy interviews, and they don't have to be called empathy interviews, but oftentimes, you know, this ability to, whether one-to-one or have access to ask questions and listen to how your different customers are actually thinking. And you can understand their needs, understand behaviors, their attitudes, their feelings about things. So one example, I have different videos in this presentation. This one, UserTesting runs studies all the time. And one of the ones that we did was a series of interviews, just asking various people around their thoughts on the pandemic. And this little clip is just taking the time to ask people around, you know, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to once the pandemic's over? And you can kind of tell through the video, and you start listening, they start bringing up information and how they're feeling about it. It gives you a better understanding of where everyone's mindset is. So I'll just play it for you now.
I was meant to go traveling last year to Europe for my gap year. Obviously, that went belly up, so I really love to be able to try and get over to even some destinations like Hawaii or New Zealand. Basically travel around Australia, travel around the world.
So I'm very much wanting to go interstate, to travel, to feel safe and free, relaxed. I'd also love to go overseas.
I'm looking forward to a lot of traveling. Traveling is one of my favorite pastimes. So currently with all the lockdowns, I've not been able to do so for 1+ years.
Meet my family, traveling, like just nearby country, going to resorts or beach just to relax.
So of course the first activity is traveling, because I used to do it like on an annual basis, and I didn't know that I was like so privileged, and I took it for granted.
So you're listening to this, and maybe many of you are actually feeling this way as well. The desire to travel, I know I am, but when you reach out and start asking, exploring different questions, you really you see how people are truly kind of feeling about different things and different parts of the experience. So best practices. So, that's great talking to customers. What are some ways that you can actually better scale this internally? And my 3 recommendations, one of them is if you can observe and analyze as a team. So we have a ton of different customers. I know a lot of businesses, whether they actually bring together designers, researchers, engineers, product managers, content teams, really all in a room and listen to their customers and hear about what their needs or kind of feature sets. And it really gives people an understanding in a way to have some conversations about the customer. And then building it actually into your process makes it a lot easier. Another part is really sharing learnings across teams and departments. So, customers do interesting things. People will share on internal kind of podcasts or on Slack channels. We'll also hear about customers going and doing happy hours or pizza parties where they'll all just sit around and kind of watch different customers and really have discussions around it. I know I even internally on my monthly all hands meetings, we all take turns really sharing different customer interviews that we've had and the perspectives and learnings that we've had. And then finally, if you're a leader, one thing you can do is really set empathy hour goals. Sometimes people call them customer exposure hours, but really making sure that, the people who are building these experiences, maybe they've never even talked to people in the country they're selling their services to, or they're not quite sure how people really feel about the brand, about your service, about your products. And so really setting some goals to have people go and have these conversations, I think are incredibly important. All right, the second one. So rethink personas and how you're really learning. So instead of just having the one-page persona that lists their title or who they are, their demographic information, right? Bring a lot more richness and depth. And I'd say the second one is find ways to bring customer feedback, customer input earlier into the process when you're actually through the whole ideation, when you're brainstorming, when you're thinking of concepts, when you're thinking about ways to fix and new ideas. And, to better explain this, there's definitely, we talked a lot about empathy interviews. So having conversations with people are really important, but, sometimes what people say can be very different than what people actually do. Right. So this example that I have here is what a lot of people may be familiar with. You can read a ton of articles about, they've sometimes called it the biggest marketing blunder was in 1985 with Coca-Cola, although they definitely encourage a lot of brand recognition through that effort. But they back in 1985 launched a whole new formula. I don't know if you heard about it. And so they came up with New Coke. And New Coke was launched out globally. And the reason for doing it is that they were at that time losing market share, and they talked to over 2,000 people who stated their preferences on their formula. And so they launched it. And there was a huge backlash, huge public outcry. It was probably one of the shortest launched because the original formula returned back onto the shelves within 79 days. And so this is just an example of, it's important to talk to people, but there's also a difference around seeing what people do. So I'd say, one example is be problem finders. Maybe the distinction, I have an example that sometimes I talk about with Disney. And so you see these pictures around actually garbage cans. And if you learn about Walt Disney, long time ago, he was trying to think about how to keep a clean park, create an amazing kind of in-person experience. And he took the time to actually sit at the park and watch and observe people walking around, where they choose to put garbage down, when they threw it away. And one of the things that he learned through observation is that about every 30 steps is when people get tired of holding garbage and they set something down, and then more things kind of pile up and it gets dirtier. And so they created a rule that said throughout the entire park, every garbage can has to be within 30 steps from each other. And so if you've ever been to any of the Disneyland parks, you will see all these garbage cans everywhere to help make it a cleaner experience. But this problem and the solution, if they would have talked to a lot of different people and asked them the question, why do you put garbage down and when? People might have different ideas, but I don't think anyone would have ever come up with the answer, about every 30 steps I put it down. So there's definitely things you can find through observation. So one part I'd say is, if you can find ways to experience what your customers actually experience when they're using your product, your service, reacting to your content, the better. One can just be virtual home or virtual office visits. And so this is just a short little clip to explain to you what I mean by that. And maybe a little setup is that someone kind of really said, hey, can you show me your Alexa, Amazon Alexa device? Like, where do you keep it in your home?
Okay, so here's the door to our apartment, and we actually put Alexa here on the counter. That way, whenever we come home, we can ask her questions, or before we leave, we can have her do things. And also, she makes a great timer for the kitchen.
So it's a short little clip. What I find personally so fascinating is you watch this and you get to see how they're using it in someone's home. If you're a designer, you might look at this and think, oh, wow, it's right in the middle of the countertop and there's cords everywhere. You might kind of think of a different design. If you're a product manager, you might key into the fact that this person said they use it as a kitchen timer. Maybe there's different feature sets they should be exploring with Amazon. If you're a marketer, you might listen to this and think, oh, it's interesting. They refer to Alexa as a she, right? So it's she's there on the countertop, and so that might influence how you talk about your solution to the market. Now, this is definitely taking a physical experience and seeing what it's like, in someone's home. And I think some of the challenges that we have today is with all these different digital experiences. Oftentimes, you're not quite sure what it's like to actually go through that experience as an end user. And so, I encourage everyone who's building experiences, who's even remotely involved. I think it's important for almost anyone who's involved with customers to actually watch your customers go through and use your app, use your product, use your website, react to your different parts of your content, your digital experience. And what I mean by that is kind of a little clip here where someone is kind of going through a booking experience on a travel airline site.
Finding a departure date. I kind of wish that it just said it on the chart here. That's kind of like frustrating because I've been clicking multiple dates and they all say that they don't have a departure date to LAX from there. But it'd be helpful to be on the calendar if it just already said what days it was departing on, to like highlighted dates that it was okay to go to. Because I know this is just kind of frustrating.
It's a short little clip, but when you see what it's like when they're trying to book something, when they're trying to actually do something on your site, similar to Walt Disney, right? They might not be able to articulate exactly what their problem, but you can see if they're missing the clicks. You can see where maybe if multiple people are always running into the same issues, how to better prioritize things and make sure that you're creating the best experience possible.
Finding a
And this is a great quote by Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. And he says that empathy makes you a better innovator. If you look at the most successful products we've created, right, it comes with the ability to meet the unmet, unarticulated needs of customers. And right, empathy helps you put yourself in your customer's shoes. You hear what makes them sad, what they're excited about, what they're happy about. You watch them go through these experiences, and then you could see, right, they might not be able to articulate, but you can see where the needs are. You can see how to fix them. All right, probably the third thing, how do we actually bring customer centricity back, and how do we fix that? I'd say if we can find ways to bring customer input, customer feedback more into decision making, the better. And so, this next comic I love. I don't know how many of you, if you raised your hand, like, how do you make decisions internally today? Sometimes, I don't know if you've heard the acronym HIPPO. It stands for the highest paid person's opinion. But sometimes within companies, right, it's one person's making the call. It's based on kind of gut feel, and you move forward with it. And so obviously, I think a really important part of being customer centric is trying to get a lot more data and information about your customers, about their preferences. Do they prefer A versus B? A lot more about behavior tracking and analytics, especially with all these digital experiences that we're creating. The more that you can actually see where are they going, where are they getting lost, what are they using, what are they not using at all, the better. And then taking the time to actually survey and find out from a large quantity of audiences to learn more about their experience, I think is incredibly impactful. But I'd say, in addition to that, what we tend to see from a lot of businesses and customers is that while they're continuing to do all of these things and learn insights and start to have a lot more understanding of the customer, oftentimes more data can really lead to more questions, right? Like there's a lot of times people will do preference tests, and then over time, one wins by 0.3%. And is that, why? If something is winning by a landslide, it's really easy to make assumptions around why it is, but you don't always really know why it's winning. For behaviors, right? You're seeing the rage clicks or whatever they're doing, but you're not quite sure why. And so all the different data, I think, is really leads to a desire, and I think a need to actually talk to customers. And we call this human insight, right? If you can actually talk to customers, watch your customers go through an experience and really experience the world through their point of view, I think that's how you discover context. It's how you discover why in this digital world. And so this is just kind of some examples to help you see, all the different ways that you could be getting feedback, input, and bringing it into their feedback on the decisions that you're making.
I love curbside pickup. It is so great. Plus, I'm married and I have 4 children, and not having to take my littles into a restaurant is amazing.
I only take this out on special occasions when I go out to like dinners and brunches with my girlfriend. It makes me feel special and rich and classy, and beautiful.
Might be nice if it was a swipe interface like this.
I'll do something like this. Yes. Okay, try. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
Which form do you prefer? I prefer form number 2. There's not necessarily less steps, but this one just seems like it makes more sense. It's more simple.
The graphics are intriguing, so I like that. What I didn't like was it's trying to pull me into the application before I even get some information about it.
entering 4 codes to get 1 20-ounce, that's an awesome deal.
What do you think about our new tagline? Have you checked that on Urban Dictionary?
That's funny.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, so I'd say that as businesses, right, the more data that we have on customers, the more clarity, the more information that we can gather on them. And I think that data helps provide a lot of that information, but really pairing it, I think, with human insight helps give the data so much more context, so much more depth and richness. And I think it's really this combination that helps businesses, that helps decision makers, right, make better decisions, have more confidence in the decisions that they're making, and ultimately drive better results because they're creating better experiences, better products, better services. The CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, right here, the founder, it's, you know, he says it's more, right? It's more about the data. Good inventors and designers deeply understand their customers. They spend tremendous energy developing that intuition, and they study and they understand many anecdotes rather than only the averages that you find on surveys. And I think it's a great quote because it really helps illustrate, right? The data gives you so much information, but when you're trying to build something for people, right, you need to take the time to get to know them, to have empathy, to really have that intuition of what their needs are and how they actually respond and act. And, you know, ultimately, it's not just about having empathy, getting to know your customers, right? It's about building better offerings, better experiences for your customers. There's been a variety of different surveys out there and studies. This one that was done this last year within Asia Pacific, right, showed amazing results, right? If you build these great experiences, they drive business success. And so, you know, a lot of the CX champions, the one that were really focused on this compared to more of the starters, saw amazing results, right? 4x more likely to exceed their CSAT targets, 4.4x more likely to have gained more market share, and a 10.8x more likely to have driven customer spend up significantly, 14x more likely to believe their efforts to support customer service agents is very smooth, and 4.2x more likely to be seen as competitive differentiators. And so, you know, all of this is really about making sure that you can do and build great experiences for your customers, but also drive success for your business as well. So hopefully that was helpful, insightful. Just the one slide, if you haven't ever heard about user testing, right? We offer a solution that helps you on demand, virtually get access to human insights. We connect you with access to a large panel. We can also connect you to your own customers and have this platform that enables you to get it all on video, be able to get the rich insights, create the clips, share them out, and really help you ultimately have better empathy for your customers and make better decisions. If you'd like a trial, I have a quick link there. So if you ever just wanted to test it out, or if you ever want to be on our panel, I'm happy to have any of you join. You can go to user.com/getpaidtotest. Ultimately, we are a company that's been in business for many years. We have more than 2,000 of the global customers, and including more than half of the top 100 brands in the world. And so many of them are using us from the digital first companies to also everything from financial companies, insurance companies, you name it. All of them are really starting to build in human insights into how they're building, designing services. So I'd love for you to check us out if you ever get a chance. So thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully this helped you inspire some new ideas to potentially bring in and talk to your customers and bring it into how you actually build your products, your services, your messages, and your apps today. Thanks for taking the time and have a good rest of your day.
So ladies and gentlemen, well, that was Michelle. Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us and giving us your valuable time. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're joined by Rebecca. Cornwall is an experienced human-centered designer and research leader and practitioner. Her 20 years of experience spans corporate, agency, and startup, working with numerous industries and organizations globally to evangelize, democratize, and build capability within the user research space. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us on behalf of UserTesting. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And thanks for having me today. It's what a fantastic day so far.
Absolutely. So Rebecca, let's go quickly on the questions. We've got a lot from the audience, but in interest of time, I'm going to be going ahead and asking two of them to you. So Rebecca, first up, there's a question which is coming from the audience, is that how often should I be testing or getting customer feedback? Now that's a very relevant question, Rebecca. I'd like you to answer that.
Oh, that's a wonderful question with one probably quite clear answer from my side, and that is as often as you can. And it might be worth kind of talking a little bit about what that means, because I think often it's about challenging what's possible in line with how we understand our qualitative insights and how we're getting insights with our customers. And one of the things that we commonly hear on a day-to-day basis is, our time is short. We don't have a lot of time within the team to look at our research efforts and to speak with customers. Budgets are dwindling. The landscape can be quite uncertain. So how do we best spend our time and our energy? And often what that means is validating work that's maybe quite far down the production cycle or ideas that are quite well formed. And that is great, but it's not necessary. The idea that maybe testing little and often has a greater impact. You've got that ability to test through the process of those initial business ideas right through to ideation and also post-launch testing. All of those stages are just as important. And it could be argued that actually maybe it's better to try and test as far ahead of time as possible so that you're learning to mitigate against risk. There's that danger, I think, that the further you get down the line with a product or a service in terms of how you're presenting it to customers, there's less appetite to change that and iterate based on feedback. So I think small pieces of feedback very often is definitely the key to achieving that, and very, very possible even within tight timeframes and small teams.
Absolutely. Rebecca, there's also another question which has come from the audience. It says that in the current state of business with time and resources which are shrinking, how do I convince an executive that we need to dedicate time to listen to our customers? Now, that's again another very good question. Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, I think that actually builds quite nicely on from the previous one, which is, limited resources. How do we spend that time best? And more than anything, I think especially in CX and UX teams, we're very connected with customers. We know what those pain points are quite intimately, and we know what that landscape looks like. But that doesn't mean to say that necessarily the rest of the organization holds that view. And also there being a glut of data. We've got access to so much data, we don't know what to do with it. So it's really about finding ways to prioritize within the business. Now, even if you don't have the handicap of having silos within your organization and you are very collaborative and you're proud of that, there's still a lot of data, a lot of goals that need to be aligned in order to formulate that priority. And the way that we do it is to sort of quote an old UX adage is show, don't tell. So don't tell your decision makers within the business what we should be doing in the form of lengthy reports and more data that they have to try and calculate and figure out what to do with, but show them what customers are experiencing. Give them a first-hand view through video, what they're going through, what they're struggling with. And I guarantee every single time there will be a shift in that viewpoint and ultimately empathy. And that is what moves these priorities up the food chain in terms of where budget gets assigned and where to have that biggest value for customers, but also impact for the business.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Rebecca, and also a big, big thank you to Michelle for joining us from UserTesting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.